Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to Tony the Technician's channel, and today we're going to be installing the Dyno headers on the 85 Camaro. If you guys want more information on the Dyno headers, I do have a video that I recently posted on them, so go ahead and check it out. I also had to clock my starter or rotate the solenoid on it in order for it to clear the header on the passenger side. So if you want to see how to do that, or you need to do that, go ahead and check out the recently posted video on that as well. I also got a lava wrap for it to protect the solenoid from heat from the header. And then after we get these headers installed, I will be installing this oil filter sandwich adapter. And this goes to the block, oil filter sits on the bottom. And here I have two ports for my oil pressure or oil temp and warning light and stuff like that. So I'll be able to install it through that. Then I'll be using the Earl's Pressure Master Series header gasket and the ARP 100-1109 header bolts. They have a small head on them, so there's a little bit more clearance when installing the headers. And we're going to be torquing these 25 foot-pounds, or at least the ones I can get to. We'll see how that goes. But the passenger side should be fairly easy. The driver's side, we'll see about it. I hope you guys find this informative, and thank you guys so much for watching. I want to start off by showing you, this is the starter wrap that I purchased. And it is from Heat Shield Products. It's actually a lava wrap instead of your foil style, so you don't take the chance of the foil contacting any of the posts and shorting anything out. So that's why I went with that. It protects up to 1200 degrees continuous and 2000 degrees non-continuous. And then the first thing I did was I went ahead and applied a little bit of anti-seize to my header bolts, because that's what all the Chevy manuals and everything recommends. Some people will recommend, Loctite so they don't back out or anything. I'm gonna go ahead and try the anti-seize and see if it works. Obviously, it's just as bad if over the years your header bolts rust and end up breaking off when you try to replace them. That's one thing you definitely don't want. And then as far as the header gasket, it's the Earl's Pressure Master. And this is gonna be an aluminum outer casing and a graphite foil center section around the primaries, and that is to squish and seal everything. So we'll see how that goes. They don't have the loops on the end to kind of set down on the bolts. You kind of got to install it with the header and everything together, but that's all you'll need. Everything's prepped. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the header, and we'll get it installed. Okay, so what I've done here is I've set the gasket on here and I've put a bolt through each end. And then I'm just going to slowly lower it down in here and get them started. All right, so both ends are started, and that's going to be either an 8mm or a 5/16, I believe. They'll both fit, but other than that, I'm just gonna get all of these kind of ran in. And when we go to torque these, you don't wanna go in a straight line either direction. You wanna kind of start from the outside, work this one, then that one, then this one, then this one, this one, and this one. Or you can do it from the inside out. You can start by torquing this one, then this one, then this one, this one, this one, this one. You wanna do it evenly so you get a good seal all the way across and you don't take the chance of messing up the gasket or bending the flange, which on these Dyno you don't really have to worry about too much because it's not cheap. You don't have a real thin flange like a lot of other headers. You have a nice thick flange, so should create a nice good seal. But now that I've got all these started, I'm going to go ahead and grab my ratchet. I'm going to run all these down, and then we'll get to torquing them. Here I have all of the bolts started and just ran up against the header and tied against the head. They're not actually tightened down or torqued yet. Now, in order to get this one tightened and this one tightened, since they come right up to the bend, you won't be able to get like any normal socket in there. I even tried a 1/4 inch wobble socket and it still wasn't enough to clear, so I just had to run it up with a wrench and do it that way. So in order to get these as close as possible to torque, since I definitely won't be able to get my torque wrench on them, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna tighten up the outside two, and then I'll work on this one, kind of go back with this wrench, feel how snug they are, and get these with the wrench as close as possible to the same feeling. That's the best I can do with what we have here. So that's how they look so far. Looks really nice. Hopefully we get a nice clean seal with these header gaskets. But now I'll set you up and I'll get these torqued. What I'm gonna do is I actually have my torque wrench set to 18 foot-pounds, and I'm just going to go ahead and torque these to 18 first, and then I'll go back and take them all to 25. And then later on down the road, after the car is running, I'm gonna come back and double check the torque and maybe tighten them up just to make sure everything's okay and still tight. And I'm just gonna go from one end to the next. Now I would normally go here, but I can't get that one, so I'm gonna go back over here, tighten this. Then I'm gonna come in with my wrench, because it's as much as I can do. Kind of feel how snug these guys are. And then try and do it the same thing with these. Finish up with this guy right here. Now remember, that's only 18 foot-pounds. Now I'm gonna go back and do the exact same thing at 25 foot-pounds. So that's it as far as the passenger side. I do have clearance over here. I'll show you real quick. Okay, so everything's nice and tight. And now I actually do have clearance in between. I know you can't really see it, but there's about a ½ inch of clearance between the header and the solenoid, so that's good. And that's it for the passenger side. Now we'll move on to the driver's side and see how fun it is to get that header in there. I did manage to get it in. It's not installed. I did try it from the bottom of the car. There's no way that was happening. Now I did kind of nick my brake line right there. Not like break it or anything, but I do have everything painted and it kind of nicked it up a little bit. I did have to kind of bend them a little bit out of the way. It does help that I have a flexible oil dipstick, and then it may make it easier if you remove the valve cover. I was able to do it without removing anything or unbolting the motor mount and lifting the side of the engine. I was able to squeeze it down in there, so that's really good. But now that once I get it mounted up, I'm gonna have to check, make sure none of the brake lines are touching the header and anything like that. But it is possible if you have a flexible dipstick like this one. If you don't, you have a solid one, you may have to remove the dipstick and the valve cover to make it a little bit easier for you. So now that I've done that, I'm gonna go ahead and get the header gasket and the bolts anti-seized up, and we'll get this thing installed just like the other side. Header gasket is in there and the bolts are all started. Now this side, not only is the header harder to get in, but the bolts are in much tighter spots as well. Even less of these are going to be able to get a torque wrench on. I'll probably end up using a wrench on most of these, such as this one, that one right there, and probably the back too, which I will probably do from underneath the vehicle because it's easier to get to. And that's probably about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and get these snugged up as much as possible, and we'll see which ones I can get a torque wrench on. But I did have to kind of get down underneath the car and push the brake lines, being careful not to break any of them, push them away from the header so none of them make contact, because 2 of them did. So that's it as of right now. So for this far back one, what you're gonna wanna do, underneath the car. Sorry, I know it's a little hard to see. That far back one, even with your wrench, which will be the only thing you can get on it, you won't have any room to turn that wrench. So I had to use this stubby 8mm or 5/16, whichever one you prefer, to run it in as far as I could. And then once I actually got it all the way in, I was able to get the box end of this wrench on there and actually tighten it down. And I just took this wrench, I mean, it's short, so I just took this and tightened it as much as possible. And then I'm doing basically that same thing on this one here, so those three, and then this one, and the second one from the back, I can actually get a torque wrench on. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now to 25 foot-pounds, and then just take those other three that I can't get a torque wrench on and just tighten them as much as possible. And that's as much as we can do as far as installing these headers. That's it as far as the Dyno header install. As you guys know that I've mentioned throughout the video, any of the bolts that I couldn't get a torque wrench on, I tightened as much as possible with that short 8mm. Other tools that you may need is a stubby 8mm or 5/16 if you go with these header bolts. And make sure to anti-seize your bolts so you don't have issues. It also helps with the install and torque. And then all of them that I could get a torque wrench on, obviously I torqued to 25 foot-pounds. And the back one on the driver's side, I did have to access through the bottom of the car, and I installed this header on the driver's side through the top. And then on this side's pretty simple since it's pretty open compared to the driver's side, and same thing. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have any questions, please leave a comment down below, or if you have any tips or tricks, also leave it down in the comments for others. And that's basically it. Another thing to keep in mind is make sure your brake lines are not touching the headers. If you have to, slightly bend them out of the way. I know on a couple different years of Camaros, they routed them a little bit differently, so just keep that in mind. And I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time.